board would ask if you would please put your phones on silent or vibrate, so in case they go off, they don't interrupt today's proceedings. The board is vested with the powers to act on the cases before us as outlined in Section 1740-180 of the Metro Code of Law. The code requires that 4 members of the 7-member board be present to constitute a quorum. We have 4 members present today. The code also requires that you have 4 affirmative votes to grant your application, so you will need a unanimous vote in your favor today of all 4 members to have your case approved today. In the event you don't have 4 votes today in the affirmative, let's say it's 2-2 or 3-1, your case will stay on our agenda for the next 30 days. We will have one more hearing in the next 30 days. That'll be January the 16th. And at that time, the 3 members who are not present can watch the proceedings that are being recorded, catch up and get back up to speed, and then can participate at the next meeting. And then after that meeting, if you still are at a tie vote, if you still do not have 4 affirmative votes, your case will be deemed denied by operation of law. Again, it's important for you, anyone wishing to address the board, to come forward. Come up to the microphone desk there at the front. We've got 4 microphones for you. Just at the base of the microphone, just to the right of it, you'll see a little person symbol there. Push that button one time, and a red light will come on like you see on my microphone here. And identify yourself with your name and address, and then make your presentation to the board. If you have a case today that does not have the opposition present, you'll have 5 minutes to present your case to the board. That 5 minutes is just testimony time. It does not include the questions from the board might have of you or your answers to the board's questions, but it just includes the testimony time. If cases have opposition present, you'll have 10 minutes to present your case. Now that 10 minutes is 10 minutes per side, so that'd be 10 minutes for parties in support of a case, and then 10 minutes for parties opposed to a case. And if you have multiple speakers for either side, be sure to divide your time accordingly. That 10 minutes is not per speaker, it is per side. So if there's 3 people that want to come talk, be sure to divide up your 10 minutes amongst yourselves before you get up here. In cases with opposition, the applicant, as I said, gets 10 minutes to present. They may want to save some of their 10 minutes for rebuttal of the opposition's testimony. The process today will be to go first. I will present on the wall here by means of a PowerPoint presentation, and I'll show photographs of the site and explain to the board what the request is. And then after I'm done, I'll turn it over to the applicants will come first. And then after the applicant goes, the opposition will come next. And then once the opposition's done talking, the applicant will get a chance for rebuttal. I do have some preliminary announcements first. We've got some cases on our agenda that have been postponed. So the first case I'd like to draw your attention to, members and staff, will be case 2024-244 Mission Homes LLC at 3508 Foxhall Road, requesting an Item A appeal of the zoning administrator's denial and cancellation of the permit. That case has been postponed and will be heard on January the 16th in this room at 1 p.m. Again, if you're here for case 244 on Foxhall, that will be heard January the 16th. Next case, and just listing at the bottom of page 2, there was case 253 that was filed on 115B Warren Drive. That case has been withdrawn by the applicant. And then finally, case 2024-255 in the middle of page 3. This is at 1411 Old Hickory Boulevard. Home Capital LLC was requesting a variance in fence height on Old Hickory Boulevard. That case has been deferred at the applicant's request until February the 6th BZA meeting. That case on 255, if you are here for that, no new notices will go out. This is your notice, and we will publish that date, publish the agenda on February 6th, listing that case being on under old business. And that is the case record. At least the preliminary items today. The board does have a consent agenda. A consent agenda is an agenda that the chair or vice chair recommends to the remaining members of the board cases that should be approved at the beginning of today's meeting. On these cases, they feel that the applicant has, in their submittals, satisfied the board's definitions for hardship for a case, if it's a variance case, or they meet all the criteria of a special exception. If it's a special exception case, I'll call now the cases recommended for consent and just the consent agenda. If you're here in opposition to a consent agenda case, if you wouldn't mind, please raise your hand. And we'll pull that case from consent and hear it in its regular order as listed in the agenda. The first case recommended for the consent agenda is case at the top of page 3, case 2024-254, Roshana Whittington Lyons, the appellant, on owner of the property at 200 Brevard Court, requesting special exception from the daycare requirements in the R10 district. Are there any parties here present opposed to Ms. Whittington Lyons' daycare request at Brevard Court? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Carpenet recommends this case for consent. This is a special exception. The applicant's submittal complies with all the requirements of the special exception in the zoning code, and so she recommends that case for consent. The next case recommended for the consent agenda is case 2024-256, Joshua McDonald, XE Development Company, owner of the property at 2708A Tucker Road, requesting a special exception in the adaptive residential requirements in CL to build a two-family dwelling. Are there any parties present opposed to case 256 on Tucker Road? Madam Chair, seeing none, this is a special exception request and meets the criteria for special exception. And then the next case recommended for consent is case 2000, this is back at page 4, 2024-257, Outfront Media in the city of Goodlettsville, or the owner of the property, 2436 Gallatin Pike, requesting a variance from the digital billboard spacing requirements in CS. Are there any parties here present opposed to case 257? Okay, Mr. Chair, seeing none. That case is recommended for consent. Finally, the last case recommended for consent, case 2024-258, Mr. Cameron Weiss, 317 Hancock Street, requesting a variance from the FID-SIFE provisions in the SP zone district. Are there any parties here opposed to case 258 on Hancock? Madam Chair, seeing none, that is your consent agenda.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept consent?
Move to accept the consent.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that's approved 4-0.
You just follow Windows on Monday regarding permit. Okay, the cases approved by the board are cases 254 on 200 Brevard Court, case 256 Joshua McDonald on 2708 Tucker Road, case 257 Outfront Media in the city of Goodlettsville at 2436 Gallatin Pike, and case 258 Mr. Cameron Weiss approved 317 Hancock Street. Okay, that is our consent agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have two cases on today's public hearing. And the first of the two cases that we'll call will be case 2024-242. Mr. Fred Brooks, the appellant owner of the property at 1633 Pawnee Trail, requesting a variance from the side setbacks in RS40. The appellant is seeking to construct a pole barn with an attached carport. Is the applicant present? Mr. Brooks present? Okay, sir, come forward and just have a seat at the table. Are there any parties present opposed to case 242 on Pawnee Trail? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Brooks, I'll go through the photographs and your submittal first, and then I'll turn it over to you to present your case to the board. All right. The subject property is located on the south margin of Pawnee Trail. That is the parcel that you see in red there. This is just east of Neely's Bend. Board members, we had a case on Neely's Bend at our last meeting. This is up in that part of Davidson County, and the gentleman's parcels here that you see. And the variance request in his zone district in RS 80 requires a 15-foot side setback along the property lines for all structures over 700 square feet. And gentleman's structure is proposed to be slightly larger than that, so it necessitates a 15-foot setback, and he is requesting a 5-foot setback along the western property boundary. In this photograph, the north is at the top of the page. This is a view upon my visit out on the 12th of this month, view from the road facing south, and views to buildings on either side. Obviously, you can see it's a fairly rural area, and then a view, and as an homage to my dad, my fingers at the top of the photograph attempting to stop the morning sun from blinding you. So, but it'll be right back in this general area. I say that to my late father. Just about every photograph he ever took had his thumb in it. But that building would be sitting right back in that general area. And that's the case record as we have it. Sir, if you would, please state your name for the board. You'll have 5 minutes to present your case. And council member, you're not bound by that 5 minutes. You're welcome to come forward if you like, or when the gentleman gets done, you can provide your testimony as well. All right, Mr. Brooks.
Hi, I'm Fred Brooks, the owner of that property, along with my wife, Elizabeth. And by the way, we own the property right next door to that, would be on the left on that picture. It's an investment property and we rent it. The property now has a concrete barn shed that needs to go. It's kind of dilapidated, and we wanted to build a 30-foot by 40-foot pole barn style shed. The back 16 foot of that would actually serve as a carport for we have a pontoon trailer. I'm trying to get it out of the weather. And the reason I'm asking for the 5-foot setback is to move that new barn a little bit closer to the line so I have more room to come around with my trailer, because there's a tree right there that I'd rather not cut down. It's essentially the biggest reason to keep it away from that. I don't know if there's any other details you need. I have a picture of the barn, or an artist's rendition of the barn that we're trying to build, if that would help.
No,
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Brooks, or should I go? Go ahead.
It's in here somewhere. I get nervous in front of these people.
Especially sitting next to me.
I know, you're giving me nervous. There's the old barn. Here's the new barn.
You can go ahead, Councilmember.
Okay, thank you. So Tanya Hancock, council member for District 9 in Madison. And as Mr. Hargis mentioned, we've had a couple of applications lately here, so we've had lots of turnout at our community meetings, and we've talked about this barn at this community meetings where people from the very same street and neighboring streets were present, and no one objected at all. In fact, everyone is super in favor of saving all the trees we can. So everyone's been just happily in support of this. And I think also if you look at the layout of the neighborhood and the way these lots, both Mr. Brooks' lot that he and his wife live in, as well as the lot next door that they own, and the other one, they back up to a property at the side, and those folks are also not in objection. Everyone thinks this is going to look great. So I heavily support it and hope you guys do too. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one clarifying question. I think because of the picture, I understood the location of the tree, but location of the tree is behind your house, and then if you were to keep a 15-foot setback, the shed or garage, proposed garage would be closer to the tree and kind of harm the tree. That's what I understood from your testimony. Am I understanding correctly?
Right, I could provide this aerial photograph if that would help.
That would be great.
I think that's actually showing the old barn, and you can see it's a fall picture of the tree without leaves to the right of the barn in the backyard there. And I'm trying to keep the new structure far enough away so I can access the carport.
So just point of clarification, and you're asking for this variance specifically just for the reason to save the tree, correct?
Well, to save the tree and keep it where I can access the carport from the rear and back.
So, this is the street, the front, you'd be coming down the side of the residence.
Yes.
And you'd be coming down
Well,
through here
I would turn right down the driveway further and then into the back.
and then come this way,
Yes,
right?
correct. That's how I do it now. And I also own that property next door, so I give myself permission to go on it and drive through around the back.
Do you have any information on this tree? Like what kind of tree it is, what its diameter, anything other than knowing it's a tree?
Do I have any other?
What kind of tree is it?
What kind of tree is it? How big is
It's
it?
a walnut tree.
It's a walnut tree?
Mhm. And further to the right of that is a huge pecan tree that made the, what was that, neighborhood tree award or something like that.
I have to mention that Mr. Brooks is also our neighborhood tree captain for all of our Route Nashville and Cumberland River Compact Tree Impact, which in Madison is one of the top 3 areas because we need more trees in Madison.
Yeah, that's great. Have you explored any other locations on the property putting this, that you could still stay within the side setback, or you just kind of anchored there because that's where you've been using it?
Well, it's the best place for it. And that's where the old barn is,
There's already a cement pad.
with that, and we can excavate that and then put it in the same place.
Yeah, there's already a cement pad there too, so it would be, also not good for the environment, adding extra cement elsewhere and then having that there with the old dilapidated one.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any additional questions while we wait on? No.
I might add one more thing. The current barn, cement green barn, I think you saw the picture. From the best of my abilities, I think it's about 12 foot off the property line at this point. Of course, that was built moons ago, and it was permitted, by the way. So, for what it's worth, it's already kind of close. But because it's kind of open backyards and we own both properties, I just don't see it being an impact on the property line.
If there's no other question for the applicant, do you have any further statements?
I don't have any more.
Okay.
Thank you. I
Okay, we'll
appreciate
close the
your
public hearing then.
consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are plenty of variances where we've approved them based upon the presence of trees as a basis for it. I think it's probably one of the stronger grounds that we have. And so I'm persuaded and think this is a fairly straight-up case.
Any further discussion?
So you're, still new-ish here. There are grounds for, this is essentially a hardship saving a tree. You said there's been these ones.
Because it ties to the land. I mean, basically, it has to be something that's tied to the sort of the nature of the
Topography of the
property
land,
itself. And so,
exactly.
if you've got essentially a large mature tree, or even one that's growing, I mean, we've definitely had these variances come through where it's, I think we even had one maybe a few months ago. I think you might have been out, but we had one where we basically did a very similar thing.
Do we ever, and I know this just because I'm a builder in many different markets, and Nashville lacks tree protection for a lot of their trees.
Right.
So a lot of these trees die 3 to 5 years later. Like if you drive through a whole bunch of developments that were built 5 to 7 years ago, you're going to see a lot of dead and almost dying trees. Do we ever put any, additional restrictions to make sure that these trees are in fact protected? Because I think a lot of people down here don't understand what needs to be done. It sounds like he might because he's involved in this, but there's a critical root zone and a structural root zone and a handful of other things that need to be done when you're constructing close to a tree. So he might be doing, to the best of his knowledge, saving this tree, but he could build the structure and 5 years down the road it could be dead. It's more of a, maybe that's outside our purview, but I feel like we're granting a variance on a living thing. We need to make sure that living thing, in fact, survives if construction's that close to it, so.
Can the urban forester review it?
Track him on the building permit, yes.
Yeah.
And I was going to mention that in the application for variance requests that I have in my BZA notebook, it does mention mature trees as a practical difficulty in which you can approve a variance.
And is there a threshold for what defines a mature tree other than just the applicant saying that there's a mature tree and we're just trusting what they say is in fact?
Yeah, there isn't, it's not defined.
Not defined. I'm all about saving trees because we don't have enough and they're being killed all the time in a lot of development, so.
Yeah, we can certainly track the urban forestry, urban forester, just give it.
Whatever type of moderate
Okay.
and reasonable amendment could be made to make sure that whomever's doing the work knows to protect the roots and minimize damage.
It doesn't sound like if the applicant is the root Nashville tree captain wouldn't have an objection to having the urban forester be made aware of the activities.
Yeah, I mean, you have to stay out of the structural root zone and you have to minimize some work within it's all achievable. Obviously this map's not to scale, but I kind of see where the walnut tree is. I think it could be constructed without damaging enough of the root. That's my only consideration.
I do appreciate the suggestion. I'm all for saving the tree, especially mature tree and walnut. Those are hardy, legacy trees. So more reason for us to protect. But I'm kind of concerned if we were to put additional condition, if we, exceeding our authority. Because in the past, we granted variance based on the mature tree and protect the tree. And that time, we never requested to, make the tree live longer. So I think, for us to grant variance or not is based on the property and condition. And to me, protect, heritage tree or mature walnut meets the criteria. And also, still leaves 5 foot setback. And, it's good, the applicant owns the property right next to it. But in the future, if the property were to sold a third party, still have a 5 foot setback, which is common in more urban area. So I think in that both sense, to me, it meets variance.
Yeah, I have no objection with the condition being placed on it. I also have no objection with it not being placed on there.
I think the intent would be the urban forester look at it during construction, and that during construction it would be protected. I don't think we can guarantee, or he can guarantee
Yeah.
the tree would survive, but just having that measure in place during construction would be helpful.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't want to do anything that's onerous or would, it's really just a moderate education on what you need to do to protect a tree and some tree protection fencing around it so people don't, all the roots for most of the time, the roots that feed the tree live in the first couple inches.
Well, and I think too, that the idea too, there's a tree that's, I think one of them was less mature. The idea of, mature trees are great, but you want the not mature trees to become mature trees. And
right.
So it's, I think a consultation is a reasonable thing and doesn't place ongoing sort of burdens on the applicant.
I agree. And it personally just drives me nuts seeing all the construction and bobcats just going right over these trees, because homeowners move in and big limbs start to fall, and inevitably they're going to have to cut it down in 3 to 5 years. So it just frustrates me. So
I'm glad you brought that up.
So
Is there any further discussion, or does anyone have a motion on it?
Mr. Ransom.
I'll make a motion. We approve the variance with the condition that they would consult with the urban forester to make sure that the means and methods of constructions will help make sure the tree survives beyond the time of construction.
I'll second that motion. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. There's 4 in favor, none against, so that passes.
Okay, case 242 is approved with the conditions as stated. All right. Our next case will be case 2000. Let me see here. Middle of page 2, case 2024-248. Mr. Henry Jahola, the owner of the property at 213 Rising Sun Terrace, requesting variances in side setback and materials in size in the RS30 district. The appellant has constructed an existing detached metal garage referred to the board under section 1720 180A. The applicant has alleged jurisdiction under section 1740 180 item B. I know that I see the applicant present. Are there any parties here in opposition to this request on 248? Okay, seeing none, sir, if you would, please come forward. You can come on up, sir. I'll reset this clock for you and show the photographs in your case. And just asking, I've got a bunch of people who didn't raise their hands, what cases you guys may be here for. This is our final case of today's agenda. So,
I'm a neighbor
oh, okay.
behind this property. I'm not really objecting.
Gotcha.
I'm curious about the material. We've had comments in our neighborhood before about metal buildings
Okay.
that do raise a flag.
I got you. Well, I'll go over all that. Let me get to this gentleman's. Okay. This is the subject property, and there are 3 issues here involved in this case. One is the overall size of the structure. Late prior council term, Councilman Hager passed an ordinance applying a accessory building overlay to this neighborhood. And in doing so, that's the section that you see in 1736-590 on your agenda. It placed size restrictions for outbuildings, it placed material restrictions for outbuildings, and it placed height restrictions on outbuildings. And of those types of restrictions, there are two issues underneath the overlay that the gentleman is running afoul of, and let me give you those now. The first limits the size of accessory buildings to 30% of the footprint of the residence. Elsewhere in Davidson County, the standard is 50% of the footprint of the residence, but in this overlay that council put on it, they restricted the size of the structure to 30% of the overall square footage of the residence. In his case, that would be a maximum size of 1,020 square feet, which is 30% of his residence. The building he has constructed is 30 by 40, which is 1,200 square feet. So we do have variance there. The second portion of the overlay deals with materials, and I'm going to read straight from the code for that section. And it says, pull that up here. Okay. Materials, it says accessory structures greater than 150 square feet must be constructed in a like manner to the principal building in terms of roof style and building materials. Alternative materials that are not metal, plastic, vinyl, or concrete masonry units may be used as primary siding materials for accessory structures greater than 150 square feet. Metal, plastic, vinyl, or concrete masonry units may be used if the same material is the primary material of the principal structure. Upon my visit out there, I'll show you the photographs. The gentleman's home is principally made out of brick, and his building is aluminum or metal siding. So that would be a variance request there. So if this structure were predominantly brick, it would comply. And then finally, under the regular zoning code, a structure of that size requires a 15-foot side setback along the property line, and he is sitting at 10 feet. And again, go through the photographs. This is the residence, and you see the residence predominantly brick. A little bit of wood siding on the gable ends, and you can see the structure the gentleman built back there, aluminum siding. And then views of other residences on either side. And it's a mixture, predominantly of brick structures. And I've got while a gentleman talks, I'll pull up, I've got a third photograph, from aerial photos, and I'll bring that up too. But with that, sir, I'll turn it over to you. And you'll have 5 minutes to present your case to the board. Are there any parties that are present in opposition or have questions or concerns they'd like to address the board with? Okay, yeah. Let's set this as a opposition case with 10 minutes per side, and that way we'll let the gentleman or whoever else wishes to speak during what would typically be the opposition time. It may just be concerns. With that, sir, I'll turn it over to you, and you'll present your case to the board at this time.
Good afternoon. My name is Henry Hochul. I reside at 213 Rising Sun Terrace, and I'm here today to ask for the variance for the building I put up. And I think the only way that I can actually really plead my case is just to give you a little bit of back history. We just moved out here from Las Vegas. It was a pretty tight schedule. I had 7 weeks to close the deal on my house in Vegas, move out, buy a house here, and move in. So it was pretty tight. And I went and I asked the realtors, is there anything in this neighborhood that would prevent me from putting up a metal garage in the back? Because I had one over in Vegas, so everything from there had to go in here. And they told me no. There's not even an HOA. So you don't have to talk to anybody. But that's not me. After we signed the deal on the house to get going, I went and talked to the neighbors. And I talked to several neighbors, and none of them were opposed to the building. Some of them, I should take that back a little bit. I did build without the permit because of timing, but I knew I could get a permit after it was done just by going through the process of documentation and maybe paying a fine or what happens here in Nashville. I'm not sure. But the timing was the only hardship I had. I mean, I didn't even know about the RS-30 zone until a violation notice that I received. Then when I dug in further, I started seeing all this stuff. But at that time, I already constructed the building. But I did pay close attention to the neighborhood. We loved the neighborhood. The roof I matched to a neighbor's roof. The color, two of the neighbors helped me pick out. And the garage doors that are on there now will be replaced as regular house garage doors. And the exterior, I plan on doing an EFIS facade system to it, which is, EFIS is an exterior finished insulated system. And I can get it done in a brick pattern. And so that's kind of my solution for keeping the characteristics of the neighborhood. And that's all I have, is just the time I had to make that whole move. That house was the first and the only house we looked at. So I had put in an offer on it, and I lucked out, and they approved the offer. And then I had to get going. I flew back and forth in 7 weeks to Las Vegas 3 times and drove back once, so it was a hard thing for me to do, being in construction for 45 years. I know better. And not trying to be arrogant about it by building it without it. I was just doing what I had to do to get the move done. And I know better to do things out of, not to code. So I really don't meet a lot of the hardship. All I do is timing. And that's what got my back against the wall, and that's why I did what I did. But I did go around and get a petition sign around the neighborhood, and I had 30 people were approved it. The position was actually column with no objection to the metal building, no objection to the metal building with an EFIS facade, and no objection at all, or they don't want the building at all. And they were all approved. Nobody signed. They were not in favor of the objection or the metal building. 2 signed that they wanted the EFIS facade, which was the plan all the time. I was planning on doing that. It was just going to come later. And then I had 29 signed with no objection to the metal building. There was 7 that had they didn't have a comment on it, but they didn't want to sign the petition. And then there was, I think, 11 that I could never get them to answer the door. I went to all the houses that were not answering 3 times. There was 2 vacant houses. And the rest of them, I tried going to the house, and nobody came to the door. Or, and I knew they were home. I think they were thinking I was trying to sell them something, like, and it was, and so that's what I have. I mean, I don't have a lot, but it's there. My next door neighbor is I built to the easements that were I had it surveyed, and I built to the easements and actually followed the line, the footprint of what was already there. I didn't encroach on the opposite side of the footprint of the house that was already there. So, like I said, I didn't know about that RS-30 zone, which has a little stricter setback.
Was the pool there at the time you built the building?
Yes.
And it was there at the time you bought the house?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. You mentioned timing a couple times. So you chose, just so I'm clear, you chose not to get a permit and plan to get a permit afterwards because of timing?
Correct.
What does that mean?
Well, I didn't have time to go through the permit process because we had to move in that 7-week period. And, but I did, like I said, I went through everything that I thought, I did my due diligence on everything with the survey and everything and the setback and or the easement. And that's where I got all my information. When the violation notice was, I got the violation notice, I talked to zoning, and that's when I found out about that RS-30. I mean, it didn't show up in my disclosure papers when I bought the house, and I said the realtors said there's nothing that's going to restrict it. And, but it was that building was very important because I had a lot of tools. You know, I'm a construction for 45 years. And so I need a place to put all those tools.
Right, I understand that. You want to keep them safe. What was the timing when you reached out to Metro? Did they say that it was going to take a long time to get a permit for accessory structure?
Well, I just know from past that what the process is. And I called TN 811 and had them do a survey on the property and all the utilities signed off. There was just one request by Storm Drain to put a gutter system on it and have it drain to the back. And I can do that. I don't have a problem doing that.
Okay.
You know, that was, but everybody else was okay where it was located. And,
Okay.
and
But so no one within Metro Building Department told you it was going to take 2 months. You just made an assumption, being in the industry, that you think would just take 2 months.
yes.
Okay.
To be honest with you, yes.
Okay.
And that's when I started talking with Larry, and I talked to Jeffy Sleck, our councilman, and he had no objection to it as well. But he says he doesn't, you know, he has no say in what the board does. So,
Right.
And I understand that.
Okay. And then you've mentioned you're in the construction industry. Just out of curiosity, are you a project manager? Or are you a laborer? Do you run a company?
I'm a quality control manager for J. Dunn Construction.
Okay.
And I'm actually a glazer by trade and been quality control for 17 years.
Okay.
With a contract. So like I said, I know better. You know, I really do, but I had my back against the wall and I had to make wrong decisions to get moved in.
I don't know for a fact, but you can get a permit for an accessory structure pretty quick here in Davidson County, yeah.
And I would, you know, again, I'm basing everything the way we do things in Las Vegas. I wasn't basing things the way how they do it here, but so I'm learning a lot out here of what's required, and I find out that building on the West Coast and building on the East Coast are two different things.
Okay.
But there was no ill will in this. There was nothing. I love the neighborhood. I think it's a great neighborhood. That's why we bought the house, because of the neighborhood. House wasn't really what we wanted, but the neighborhood was. And that's why we moved in. So there's no way I wanted to destroy the look of the neighborhood. That's why I was going with an EFS facade, added at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
Going to add another question in there. Your neighbor that's directly impacted by the fact that your building is too close to their property line, how do they feel about this?
Oh, they're fine. They're fine with it. You know, she's one of the ones that actually picks the color for the building. And so everybody that's impacted by it, I spoke to them, they were okay, except there was one that I could never get in touch with. And so from looking where everybody was looking, and the ones on the side really have and the gentleman in the back has a good look at it. In the summertime, you can't see it from the back because all the trees are all blooming, and it disappears in the wintertime. It shows up, you know, so.
And you say you're going to replace the metal facade with a brick look EFS?
Yeah.
That's
I have
a plan that you're already implementing? I saw the brick look EFS.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We use this a lot in construction, and so it was my go-to for it. So I can get the metal building, it can be built fast, but I can keep the look of the neighborhood with the brick EFS facade. Plus it insulates the building as well.
Right,
It's
and when would you do that work to?
It would probably be sometime the end of next year.
2025?
Yeah, because it's a little bit of a expense So I kind of used up all my money when I sold the house, to buy this one and get this one done up to where we liked it. But and the reason I'm asking for the approval of the metal now is so I can get the building insured. My insurance company won't insure it without a building permit. So the building and all the contents in it as of now is not insured.
Okay, I'm gonna see if there's any questions.
Just one question. This, color coded, which neighbors support, which neighbors oppose is very, very helpful to understand. And one thing I want to understand is yellow. The yellow one, definition of yellow, the yellow one was too light and I couldn't read it. So what's yellow houses?
Yellow check mark, they approved the metal building with the EFS facade, with this facade.
Got it, thank you. And also there was one opposition email we received from, I believe, one of the neighbor, Mr. Tom Cox. Do you know Mr. Cox by any chance? Is he a neighbor?
No, I don't.
Okay, yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't leave his address with his email, so we don't know how close his house is to yours, but just want to mention there was one opposition of the material.
I could probably, I have a list that Christie had given me to send letters to, and we sent letters to everybody on that list. I counted, it was 1,000-foot radius from my house, and when I GPSed it, and then I walked it with a wheel measure to make sure I was right, and I came up with 58 homes that I needed to send, but the letter that Christie sent me, there was 110. So I was like, okay, well, I sent it to everybody, even though I didn't agree with it, because I GPSed it twice and then walked it out with a wheel measuring tape. And, but I did what I was told. I sent it to everybody.
One last question is, when you bought the house, was there a detached garage by the pool? And if so, what was the location? Or there's no garage by the pool?
No garage. It had a garage in the house, attached to the house. It was part of the house, but it was too small. It was way too small, so that was the purpose of putting the other garage on.
So there was open by the pool?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's plenty of room in that, but I just said, as I said, I was following the property footprint of the driveway, and that's where I started. And that's 10 foot to the foundation, then 11 foot to the building. And I needed 15 feet to meet the R30 setback.
I'm going to see if there's any more questions from our board members. Okay, we're going to see now if there is indeed any opposition out there. Anyone wish to speak? You can. Mm-hmm. So you'll have 4 minutes and 18 seconds for a rebuttal after we hear from this gentleman.
My name's Alan Hand. I live at 348 Willowbow. I live behind the property. I was never contacted about this aside from the letter I received in the mail last week or 2 weeks ago about this Board of Zoning appeal. I don't oppose necessarily a building. I just oppose the material that's on the side of it being a metal building. We've had this with the others in the neighborhood. That's why the council members supported that amendment several years ago about another pole barn that was built there. So that would be my opposition, is a metal building as opposed to a brick building. There's been a couple of other residents in the neighborhood. Generally, they're actually ongoing right now. They've actually built brick facade buildings down the street on Willowbow. I don't have the addresses in front of me, but I think they're 340, 389 or 390, something like that. They've built some actual brick buildings that are basically the same building he's building, two-car garage type of thing. That's what I would have anticipated behind me. that I'm gonna have to look at this. Now, as he's mentioned before, yes, there's a tree there right now. Currently, I don't see it in the summertime. In the wintertime, I do see it. But I'm not necessarily opposed to the building. I'm just opposed to the material.
Would the
usage of it.
brick facade sort of alleviate those concerns that's been kind of proposed? It's
I did not see that proposal,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, if there was a brick facade, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Like I said, I'm not opposed to someone building something on their property, because if I wanted to build a building, I would like to do that, but I would want to follow the standards that were expected for the neighborhood as well, too.
Sure.
Yes.
And he does have direct look from the backyard, so he sees it all the time, you know. And I did try going to his house 3 times, and no answer.
Well, I don't normally answer
Yeah.
I just don't answer my door, you know. I don't, here again, soliciting, I don't,
Yeah,
I understand that as well. But a letter would have been fine, or something like that, would have been, you know, would have been helpful.
But you got the letter of the
Yes,
notice to
because of
come here
this,
today.
yes, there was an official letter that was submitted to me
Yeah.
a few weeks ago
Okay.
about this board.
So you got that notification?
That notification, not one previous
Yeah.
or anything like that.
Yeah, and he was proposing to change the materials as
Okay.
part of this by the end of 2025, so
Okay.
there's a solution to that.
If that occurs, yes.
Yeah. It'll have to, if this passes, it would have to occur. Okay,
And this facade system's actually structural, so I will be pulling a permit to get it installed. And let you know, there's no plumbing in this building, so it's not gonna be a residence, and I still need to get that signed by the recorder, but I was gonna wait till after we find out what the conclusion was for the building.
okay, do
So-
you have any, I wanted to see if the board members had any more questions during this rebuttal period, and if you had a closing statement.
All I can just say as a closing statement, I knew I was wrong, and I take responsibility for that. I knew better because of my background, but at the same time, I knew there's a way to work around it as well. So I had to make that decision, and we were moving material into the building before we were moving into the house. I should add one more thing. The reason we had to move right away as well is the house I was renting, the landlord would not grant me a 2-month extension. He said he wanted 12 months or nothing. And so that kind of picked up the pace again, you know, so I was kind of caught on that as well.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask the board for any discussion.
We just looking at other ones where people have built without a permit and then come back and ask for forgiveness afterwards is, no matter the background or the reasons or anything else, I personally find it pretty frustrating. Because you set a precedence where, in the past, we haven't really given much on that, and I'm not hearing much of a hardship, and he also didn't reach out.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is that, I think we got to be mindful that our job is not to be the police of the motive from there's you request a variance, you put forth your evidence, and you demonstrate a hardship. The one thing I'm seeing here that I think works in his favor that he didn't, and I asked the question to get the answer about it, is that there was a pre-existing swimming pool in the back of this property that by its nature is going to shove that garage into, I think, one of very few locations. It's not like, and the irrigation lines that sit between the pool and the structure itself. So it's one of those situations where, that in my view, he's gotten lucky because there is, I think, something with respect to the property itself that warrants the placement of this garage, and warrants the grant of the 5-foot variance to allow it. You can't build it over the pool and the irrigation lines. The swimming pool, based on his testimony, predated it. So, it was a condition of the property and of the physical land itself at the time he came. And I'm glad we had the neighbor here because, to sort of speak about it, because the only other location theoretically where it may be able to go on the property would be even closer to the back neighbors behind the pool.
Yeah.
And even in that sense, that may not be feasible.
And the slope was so deep.
Based upon,
We have the public hearing closed.
but that it may not be feasible based upon the topography, but also rear setbacks for the property. So, I hear you. I'm totally with you on, tisk, but I actually think that looking at the files and looking at the nature of the land and property itself, the applicant has demonstrated a hardship with respect to this land. Free and independent of the permit issue and the abatement.
I totally agree with everything you just said. And, but my rebuttal, if I did have one, would have been, a standard 2-car garage is 22 by 22, 25 by 25. You could build a 25 by 40 garage that would have met the setbacks. It would have been 1,000 square feet, so 20 feet under the variances. So he would be before us asking for 1 variance instead of 3.
Right.
And that, it's not like it went from 15 to 10 feet or 30 feet to 10 feet. It still would have, so he could have fit a very large detached 2-car garage that would have met all the other requirements for this particular area, 30% of the current house, which is 1,020 square feet. So I know there's some stuff to hang your hat on. I just, it's a little bit of a sticking point for me as a builder, because we do, we expect everybody, builders and people, to kind of follow that. So I'm a little hung up on that. That's all.
Totally get it.
So.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, of course, it would be so nice to come before us or the code department before build it. So after build it, come like a please forgive me is really frustrating. So I think we do have 3 issues. I mean, the variance closer to the 5-foot variance side setback, I'm with you on that because of the existing pool and irrigation. So give a 5 feet closer encroaching to the side setback is, I think, reasonable, meet the variance. But the size, it has to be 30% of the main house or maximum 1,200, whichever less. So with that, calculation, this should be 1,020 square foot. So it's exceeding, 180 square foot material. That's another thing. So that's, if we were to allow 1,200 square foot, exceeding the size, how do we find the variance for that? So that's what I'm kind of struggling. I do feel the side setback is pretty reasonable, but what's the variance to exceeding that? Just because it was built, so is it reasonable enough? So I would like, other members' opinion on that, because we have to have a reason to accept the variance.
Yeah, and I think both of y'all make really good points on the square footage issue. I mean, in reality, the applicant could cut a chunk off the back of the building and, shift the wall. I mean, if we approve the material, which on the material front, I mean, I'm, given the sort of, willingness to put this facade on there, I have no issue with the nature of it. I also, based on the testimony that there are, metal buildings that predate this in the neighborhood, we're not, they put this overlay down after several metal buildings had popped up to sort of reflect a desire to not have them. But I don't know that it's necessarily an impact on neighboring properties to keep this as a metal structure so long as there's a brick facade that's placed around it. And that the intent is to is an appearance-based intent, more so than a material.
So you're saying you're not?
I don't have I'm, in terms of the size, I mean, if I don't really have an issue with denying a variance based on for the lot coverage portion of it. I think he has demonstrated an ability to get a variance for the material and the side setback on it.
If I may say that.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
it's
okay.
closed.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to see if there's,
I'm sorry.
I'm just ruminating.
yeah, that's fine, take your time. I don't have any different comments than all of you, so it's a tough one.
I mean, to meet 1,020 square feet, the applicant would have to essentially shave off 6 feet of the rear of the shed, which, from a construction standpoint, is moderately possible without great, issue or expense. Meeting the side setback is much more difficult. Shaving off 5 feet from the entire shed would probably not be possible to salvage the structure from a structural wise. And then the material standpoint, I mean, I guess I agree with you that there's other metal sheds that probably predate some of this stuff, but that was probably there, I'm just guessing.
Sure, yeah. But
previous to.
And I think, though, that if it is if it's a matter of having something that looks like a brick facade or is this EIFS that's placed on it, it probably satisfies the aesthetic the aesthetic reasoning behind the overlay that was placed on it.
Yeah, I think, if we're able to basically squeeze it down, shave off 180 square feet and have some type making sure that the applicant follows a similar pattern to the house, I could probably give in a little bit on the side setback, knowing where the pool is and other stuff. I get that to work this out. It's hard for me once I see people come in here and say they either didn't know they needed to get a permit, or even in this particular applicant saying he knew he needed to get a permit, just didn't have the time, but never actually reached out to Metro to figure out how much time it would take.
Right, and I think that goes to the question of self-imposed on it, and I think that in taking a review of all the sort of evidence here, I mean, frankly, the side setback one to me is maybe not self-imposed because, ideally the application itself would have stated more plainly, I need a side setback because there's a pool and then there's irrigation lines here. Fortunately, we have the material that shows that in the actual file itself, so it's there. In terms of our consideration, there is sufficient evidence before the board, I think, to demonstrate that hardship, so that that is to me an easier answer. So
I could come to agreement with you on that, I think.
okay, cool. I mean, I'll make a motion that we approve the side setback and materials setback, with the materials setback being contingent upon within on or before December 31st of 2025, that the applicant place an EIFS on the facade, on the structure, to as closely match as possible the facade of the residence that's on the site, and deny the variance for the building coverage.
I second,
okay.
unless you have
There's a
anything.
motion and a second, and I have a discussion point on the
Okay.
motion. So it would be the denying the square footage?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I would say that it's a brick look ephes, just so that's clear, because ephes is sometimes just very like stucco.
Yes, thank you for
clarification.
your, I am
Yeah.
totally ignorant as to the scope, so
No, it's okay. It's why we all
I
have different specialties here.
greatly appreciate the clarification.
Yeah,
Happily
yeah.
accept that.
Okay, sound good to you too?
Yes, I would accept
Okay,
that
so
amendment.
we have a motion, a second, any more
One
discussion?
more question on the size variance. Do we need to put the timing, or should we extend that to end of 2025? The shrinking the size, because we denied the
yes.
size variance, so we need to
Yes.
impose,
I agree, because I don't want the guy having to go jump through the hoops of environmental court based upon the building
Right.
size. So I think that we deny the variance, or are we able to grant the variance for a limited period of time, or deny the variance or basically say that deny it effective a certain date?
A variance runs with the land,
Right.
so it can't be time limited.
No, but you could say that the size would have to be brought into compliance by
Yeah, okay.
X date, whatever.
And that would be a condition.
Okay, so I think that we,
Does that hold up the building permit?
well,
We're going to require a village faith permit for failure to paint permit.
does it need to be granted with the compliance date, or does it need to be denied with the compliance date? I guess, because,
I think for ease, I would take the ones you're granting in one motion.
Yep.
Deal with that.
Yep.
And then the denial,
okay,
you can deny it with a condition that compliance must be.
yeah, deny it, but the compliance must be achieved by,
Yeah. Without that date, we generally give folks that, let's say a case that was denied here, they have 60 days to appeal to court.
Yeah.
We're generally going to give them another 60 to find
Sure.
out, did they appeal us? And then after that, I'd take them back to court. So with your condition on a denial, just tell our staff, hey.
everything, we're setting the end of next year as the date for
Yes.
everything, so.
To be in compliance. But I would deal with the granted two separate motions, if that's this board's, which it sounds like that's what I hear. But
Yes. Okay, so the first motion is to grant the variance for the side setback based upon the demonstration of the hardship due to pre-existing swimming pool and irrigation lines on the property at the time of acquisition, and to grant the variance for building material from the overlay with the condition that by December 31st, 2025, a brick-looking ephes is placed on the structure to comply with
The intent.
the intent of the overlay.
Is that still a second?
Second.
So we vote on that motion.
Yeah, any discussion first? Okay. So we have a motion, a second. All in favor, raise their hands. So 4 in approval and none against for that motion.
All right, and the second motion is to deny the variance as requested for the square footage of the structure, with a condition that the applicant has until December 31, 2025 to bring the building into compliance.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion? No. All in favor, raise their hand. So we have 4 in favor and 0 against for denial.
Okay. Those motions are passed unanimously as stated. And members, that adjourns your meeting for today. Thank you.
Do we have the rehearing?
Oh, sorry,
yes.
yes, my apologies. That's my mistake. We did receive, and I believe you have in front of you, a letter requesting a rehearing request. This would have been for a case that was heard last meeting. The case number was, one second, I've got it here in front of me.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I want to make sure the previous applicant is clear.
Yeah, I'll talk with him after the hearing. Case 2024-249, Josh Bergener is requesting a rehearing request. Board, under your rules, the applicant provides a letter stating his request for a rehearing within 60 days of his public hearing, which he's done. The letter must state in there, under your rules, that they're, and I apologize, Ann, if you wouldn't mind for the board, read that section of the rules. Oh, that's okay. The rehearing request standards for, under the board's rules of procedure, I just don't have that with me. Ann will read you the standard of review. This motion, this case was denied unanimously 4-0. Trying to think, who was not present?
I was not
You
present.
were not here, so Peyton, you could act on the motion to rehear, but you cannot make the motion.
Oh.
As you didn't participate.
Sure.
All right, so want me to read aloud the
Yeah,
rule
please, if you
requirements?
don't
Okay, this is Rule 10, the post-hearing requests. So within 60 days, an aggrieved party may request a rehearing. You have to present new evidence that could not reasonably have been presented at the previous hearing. The request must be in writing and recite with specificity the new evidence and the reasons for the request, and they can include plans or diagrams. The board will deliberate on the motion to rehear, and this is based solely on the filings, so there's no oral argument here, and no presentations. And the request for rehearing shall be acted upon by motion of a member of the board who voted in the majority when the case was heard prior. And you need an affirmative vote of 4 members to grant the rehearing.
Just
Yes, that's a lot, I know.
clarification. So
Yes.
today we do consider a motion to hear or not, but
Correct.
actual hearing will be, does
Later.
not have to be
Yes.
today, correct?
Yeah, it'll be a
Correct.
brand new
Yeah.
hearing. We'll re-advertise it. If you,
Yeah.
if you agree to, if you do not, I'll enter an appropriate order denying the request for a hearing, and then he'll still have his 60 days of appeal from the original date.
Has everyone had time to read the letter? I know there was a lot in it, but the variance information is, like you said, will be another, if it's reheard, we would hear that. So it's really just looking to see if there's any new evidence we didn't have at the last meeting.
I think to me, the new evidence is that time there was a similar portico shed was built nearby neighborhood. That information was not shared. So that would be if there was like a precedent or a previous case, it would be certainly a new evidence to me. So with that, I'm interested to hear that case and hear the new evidence.
I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on it. One of us has to make a motion, so.
I don't have any thoughts on it. I'm happy to make a motion, but I don't want to.
Go ahead, why don't you try?
I make a motion to rehear the case based upon new evidence that's been presented.
Okay,
Second.
okay, motion and a second. Gonna assume there's no discussion. Let's vote. All in favor, raise their hand. Okay, that's 4 in favor of the rehearing.
Okay, and just a reminder, to the board member, the rehearing request has been granted. We'll set it for next available public hearing date, wherever we are in our cycle. It'll get a new case number. I do ask that the members understand that the new case is not a continuation of the prior. I mean, we're starting clean from scratch, so just try to avoid thoughts of, oh, last time you said.
So
it's
I
a
don't
brand
need to
new
watch it. I shouldn't watch the video.
No,
Good.
it'll
Okay.
have no effect. It's a de novo hearing from our legal perspective.
De
so.
novo. Great
All right.
use. Great Latin.
Thank
Joey.
you. Well, I had that law degree used for something, so. All right, with
Nunc
that, the board stands
pro tunc.
adjourned. Thanks.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.